This is titled How to Begin Researching If the Negro is the True Hebrew Israelite of the Bible, Part 3. So as with the other previous episodes, we discussed evidence of who the original Israelites are and were. So we're going to continue with the evidence, and I came across some intriguing information, especially concerning what occurred with the Israelites during their stay in Europe. Right, some of the Europeans encountered Israelites in their land and had some comments concerning their appearance. Now, we're going to begin with this: Jews and blacks in the early modern world. Now, this guy will quote some useful information, but it seems as though he may be trying to imply that when they were called black, when the Jews were called black, it was a derogatory term. But if you look at the context of the statement, it's all about their appearance. It's all about their visage. So we finally have evidence of some of the Jews who actually were in Europe. So let's go here. Okay, so an Englishman, John Greenhow, visited the Jews' synagogue in London and wrote a friend about it in 1662, describing the chief ruler, probably the president of the Parnassine, as a very rich merchant, a big, black, fierce, and stern man. At the letter's end, Greenhow reiterated with ethnographic precision that the 100 or so Jews he saw at the synagogue are all generally black, so as they may be distinguished from Spaniards or native Greeks. For the Jews' hair had a deeper tincture of a more perfect raven black. In 1690, the Reverend Robert Kirk of Aberfoyle visited the same Church Alley synagogue, ending his depiction of the worship with almost identical ethnographic punctuation. They were all very black men and indistinct in their reasoning as gypsies. So we have here evidence that Israel, even when they were in Europe, were black. So this is very useful information supporting the argument that the Negro is the true Hebrew Israelite of the Bible, right? And so we know that's the case. We know it's easy to prove. We know Moses put his hand in his vesture, pulled it out, it was white, put it back, it was another color, right? Something other than white, right? In order to impress a black Egyptian ruler of Pharaoh, his hand had to have been black and went white and then back to black, right? We understand that. We also understand that Amos 9:7 compares Israel to Ethiopians. We also understand that the great historian, Tacitus also referred to the Israelites or the Judeans as Ethiopians, right? So let's go on, and we'll now discuss this other book that covers a similar topic called The Black Jews of Africa: History, Religion, Identity. So let's see what they had to say here. Following that, G.R. Peppercorn, who was a magistrate, underlined the moral qualities of the Zulu of Natal, and the European experts of the Native Affairs Commission repeatedly reinforced the comparison with the Jews. A general type of customs of the Amazulu may be found in the early history of Hebrews until they became a nation under a settled monarchy. Zulu life was therefore organized according to an ancient Israelite scheme that Peppercorn described as pre-monarchic and a most perfect contradiction with the importance attached to the king and his role among the Zulu. Indeed, Europeans who wanted to know the Zulu religion could refer directly to the Bible. There, they would find Zulu polygamy in the stories of patriarchs, their wedding customs in the Book of Ruth, and their relationship with work in Genesis in the story of Laban and Jacob. This comparison between Jews and Zulu was reinforced by data provided by Henry F. Finn in the 1820s. Finn supplied an inventory of the most striking likeness, war offerings, sin offerings, propitiatory offerings, festival of first fruits, the proportion of the sacrifice given to the Asenusi, which is witch doctor, periods of uncleanness on the decease of relatives and touching the dead, circumcision, rules regarding chastity, rejection of swine's flesh. Because of the nature of semblance of many of their customs to those of ancient Jews as prescribed under the Levitical priesthood, Finn concluded, I am led to form the opinion that Zulu tribes have been very superior to what they are at the present time. So as if you've been following our teachings, we have shown you where the 12 tribes are, right? Where the lost 10 tribes are, which is South Africa, where Judah, Benjamin, and Levi are, which is West Africa. Okay, we show you guys this. Okay, so we're finding supporting evidence from European documents. Okay, so we're going to continue. The Scottish minister Robert Kirk, when he paid a visit to the synagogue in London in 1619, observed more than 200 Jews worshiping and noted they were all very black and indistinct in their reasoning as gypsies. So that's the same quote from the other book. This point of view dominated the vision of the Jews so much that Adam G. Degorowski, a Polish nobleman, took very light-colored mulatto for a Jew. So when he was in the United States, he took mulattoes as Jews as well. Okay, so in Hebrewisms of West Africa, which we have mentioned in the past, we see here Williams endorsed the view of a full-blooded Israelite theory of the Ashanti, described by the British as virile, courageous, and patriotic. In a detailed study, he affirmed that he identified the supreme being of the Ashanti with the Yahweh of the Old Testament and concluded, thus far, we have shown certain cultural elements common to the Ashanti and the ancient Hebrews, such as occult, religious dance, use of amen, vow, value, patriarchal system, parallel symbolism of authority in stool and chair, endogamy, cross-cousin marriage rite, and the part that wine plays in the ceremony, uncleanness after childbirth, purification ceremony, menstrual seclusion, besides Ashanti loanwords of apparent Hebrew origin. So here we have in the British Library, UK, this is an online site at bl.uk, we have here, James Howell's view is representative. It seems there is a kind of curse also fallen upon their bodies. Witness the uncouth looks and odd cast of eyes, as well as that rankish kind of scent, no better indeed than a stink. The blackness of the Jews also caught the attention of a number of writers. When William Brereton jotted down his impressions of the Jews in the synagogue in Amsterdam in 1635, he noted that the Jewish men are black and insatiably given unto women. Perhaps the most bizarre of the claims made about the Jews was one of tentatively. Okay, so we see here in Amsterdam in 1635, the Jews were black. So what happened, you'll see that, Jews were everywhere, right? Because they were scattered worldwide. But what you will see, like in the 1800s, Islam, the Muslims, made it tougher for Israel to exist and identify themselves as Jews. So they began to persecute them. The Catholic Church began to persecute them. Israel went covert and hid amongst the people of the land, right? So when the Muslims took over Africa, they converted most of Israel in West Africa to Islam. So most of Israel on the west of Africa are Islamic or Christian, right? But whatever was safe for them to convert to in order to hide themselves, as persecution had increased. So we have here on the Houston Daily Post, you'll find this interesting. Okay, this was 1897. Okay. So, Negro who can write Hebrew. Isn't that fascinating? So let's read here. Okay, September 19. A young African Negro has been in this city for the last few days who claims to be a Hebrew. He is deaf and dumb and as black as the ace of spades. He carries a pad of paper with him and answers all questions by writing them in Hebrew and Lashon Kodesh. What excites the most wonder is that he writes Loshin Kodesh very rapidly. It is the language of the books of Moses and is made a special study of, spoken and written with ease only by rabbis and highly educated Hebrews. The Negro was sent to one of the rabbis of Hartford, who is perfectly satisfied that he is a Hebrew. He says that he came from a large town in Africa, where there is a tribe of about 20,000 black Hebrews who speak Lokish Kodesh and are quite prosperous. He also says that his father is a rabbi in that town, and that is why his father took the trouble to search him to write these languages, which needed an extra amount of labor on account of his being deaf and dumb. He says his people not only write Lokin Kodesh, but it's their speaking language as well. He left home a few years ago and has seen a good deal of the world. In each town he hunts up the Jewish sects, and there they give him clothes, food, and money. What surprises him, he writes, is that no Hebrew knows of his countrymen in Africa. Okay, so we have this Negro who speaks Hebrew, and they were wealthy. So I did a little research. I came across some wealthy Hebrews in some old text, and they were known as the Mamvumbas. Well, today we don't have a group known as the Mamvumbas, at least that I know of. If anyone knows, let me know. But they were wealthy people. So I suspect what happened there is that they converted to Islam, right? The pressure from the Arabs. You know, Islam has been our greatest enemy, right next to the Vatican and the Ashkenazi. But Islam at that time was our greatest enemy and forced us to convert to Islam. So I suspect those wealthy Mamvumbas, those Hebrews, those Negro Hebrews, are now Muslim. Let's continue. So we have here the Jews, a study of race and environment. Okay. Excuse me. Okay. It is stated that the Falasha are not the only Jews of Negro race. Bastian speaks of Negro Jews living on the Loango coast in Western Africa. They are called there Mavumbu, or Judeo, right? So we see here the Mavumbas, right, which is the word I use. Here it's called Mavambu. But look what the translation is. Mavambu or Judeo. They are, on the whole, a fair-looking race, says Bastian. They are more serious and restrained than the rest of the Negroes, although in other places they are despised. Here they take a dominating position, or at least such as to be respected and partly even feared, because they are rich and have most of the commerce in their hands. The same author claims that though they are of Negro race, still he detected Semitic facial features in their physiognomies. Even in Madagascar, a traveler has discovered Jews. Seabury mentions that the Ambohipino on the east coast of that island, he met natives who called themselves Zafri Ibrahim, or descendants of Abraham, and who claimed to be altogether Jews, but I could not detect any difference in color, features, or dialect between them and the other people. So even in Madagascar, they were Negro Jews. Okay, now understand this, and I want you Israelites of America to pay close attention, because many of you are calling your own brethren Hamites. They're not Hamites. I mean, you were taken from the west coast of Africa. Your ancestors were, right? And that's along Nigeria, Mali, meaning Togo, Ghana, right? All of the territory, that's where your people come from. And some of you guys call these people Hamites, like Biafra. Biafra is Nigeria. They're Hebrews. Okay, they're not Hamites. You're calling your own people Hamites, which is ridiculous. I don't even understand why you would think such a thing when you yourself or your ancestors came directly from the same territory. Okay, so those people are Israelites. Okay, and you see here, West Africa, Loango Coast, Israelites. These are the wealthy Israelites, the Mavambu or Mavumbas, Judeos, Judah. That's who you are. That's who they are. So let's get this right. Okay, so let's continue. So now I'm going to switch to the history and description of Africa by Leo Africanus, which I've mentioned before. We're going to start on page 1004. Let's take a look. So here we go. Of the Ius, or the Jews, right? Because Europeans like to replace the I with a J, but Ius is closer to our real name, or Urvair, or Urveo. Okay, the Ius, the Jews who have been dispersed by God throughout the whole world to confirm us in the holy faith, entered into Ethiopia in the Queen of Saba's days in company of her son that Solomon had by her, to the number, as the Abyssines confirm, of 12,000, and there multiplied their generations exceedingly, in that they not only filled Abyssia, but spread themselves likewise all over the neighbor province, so that at this day also the Abyssines affirm that upon Nilus, or the Nile, towards the west, there inhabit a most populous nation of the Jewish stock under the mighty king. And some of our modern cosmographers set down a province in those quarters, which they call the land of the Hebrews, placed as it were under the equinoctial in certain unknown mountains between the confines of Abyssia and Congo. So let's take a look at a map and discuss this a little more. So here's the D'Anville map. Very, very useful, very detailed. You can zoom into this map. It is very valuable to our research. So let's look at what they said, that Israel occupied Abyssia. They occupied the Congo and areas in between, mountains, unknown mountains in between Abyssia and the Congo. Okay, where is Abyssia? Well, let's look right here. Okay, see here? This is Abyssinia. Okay, this is part of Ethiopia, or well, let's just leave it at that. It is part of Ethiopia. Okay, now the Amhara, in another book I read, the Amhara were also referred to by the Ethiopians as strangers in their land, right? Along with the Falasha. Okay, so Amhara and Falasha are also Israelites, even though they reside in the land of Ethiopia. But remember, we've always had our people in the land of Egypt and in the land of Ethiopia from its early days, right? So let's continue. Let's look and go down and look at the Congo. Okay, here's the kingdom of Congo. So the mountains between the kingdom of Congo and Abyssinia is where Hebrews lived, Israelites lived. Now look, that's a large territory, right? Look at that. And just so happens this is some of the area along the Congo coast where slaves were taken. Okay, so if you go back and look at In Search of the Ancient Hebrew Language, you'll find this same area. These Bantu, so-called Bantu territories, these are Israelite land. This is Israelite territory. Zulu, Zimbabwe. I mean, they are Israel. Now, Israel is huge. You got to understand that. Okay, so we'll see here. Let's go back here. Okay, we have the Gohan Islands. The Gohan. Okay. I want to show you this right here. Let's see. Where are we here? Let me zoom out a little bit. So we have here by Gorham, right? Phalasha or Phalashim, Jews exiled. So we have some Jews exiled here, right? So I would assume this is some of the Phalasha Jews that were exiled, right? Near Abyssinia, okay? And so we also have what we've talked about before with Idrisi, right? We had Jews here in Negro land, right? According to Idrisi, the land hereabout was peopled by Jews. Okay, so you can see according to this map where Israel was, right? Israel was in the west coast. Israel was in South Africa between Gorham and Congo, Abyssinia and Congo, right? Many Abyssinia identified themselves as Israelites. Phalasha identified themselves as Israelites. Obviously, Israel did live among the Ethiopians. I mean, they've been our allies for thousands of years. So back to Leo Africanus' book, we see here to continue. And likewise, on the north port of the kingdom of Gorham, or Goime, which we just showed, and the southerly part of the kingdom of Gorham, there are certain mountains peopled with Jews, right? Who there maintain themselves free and absolute through the inaccessible situations of the same. For in truth, by this means, the inhabitants of the mountains, speaking generally, are the most ancient and freest people. So he's saying speaking generally because they were scattered amongst the mountains between Abyssinia and Congo. They were also in Lamland and near the Gorham, right? These are your people. You need to understand your real history. Your relatives are not Indians. They are not Mexicans. Okay, I mean, we're talking about the people who are by blood Israelites. They're not Hamites, and please, let's not say that anymore. I mean, there are many Hamites among our people, and our people live among Ham. Okay, but I'm showing you how to make the distinction between those of Hamitic blood and Shemitic blood. So now, as I wind things up, I'm just going to introduce you to this book as well. The Jews of Africa, especially in the 16th and 17th century, by Sidney Mendelssohn. Okay, and this was in 1920, published in 1920. So I just want to introduce you to the book. If you find it worth reading, you can find it at archive.org. Let's zoom in here. No part of the long and checkered career of the Jewish nation is more shrouded in mystery and more romantic in legend than the story of the advent and establishment of the Israelites in the mystic land known in medieval times as the territory of Prester John. It is a difficult task to compile from legend, tradition, and such scanty documents as exist the conjectured history of the Phalasha, those dark-visaged Hebrews whose ancestors were distributed throughout the great and distant regions which were nominally or accurately under the authority of the rulers of Abyssinia and Ethiopia. So you see here, and I mean, there are many old books that talk about the Phalasha Jews. Now you know why the fake Jews in Israel had to let them into their territory, into their land, and acknowledge them as Jews. There were way too many old documents talking about Phalasha. So they couldn't argue against it, right? They were documented way before, the so-called Jews of Israel today even entered the land. It was documented hundreds of years ago. So they had no choice but to accept the Phalasha Jews. But, you can't have white Jews and black Jews not be descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. We know that, right? Okay, so as far, however, as can be surmised from such sources as are available, an independent Jewish kingdom long existed within the confines of what was known as the Ethiopian Empire. Its territory, which varied in extent from time to time, was considerably greater than that embraced by the ancient kingdoms of Judah and Israel, and its existence in all probability was of a longer duration. The great mystery which shrouded the greater part of Africa down to time still but little distant would account for the fact that so little was known of this Jewish kingdom, if indeed a kingdom actually existed. And as a matter of fact, very little that is absolutely authentic is known about it today, even by those few people who have made a very close study of the history of the ancient empire of Ethiopia and the kingdom of Abyssinia. So you can download this book, you can continue to read, but I wanted to show you that the Falasha or your relative, many of the Amhara people who were known as strangers to the Ethiopian or your people. Okay, you literally were scattered. Your ancestors are everywhere. Okay, and most of them are in Africa, a large number, because why? This is where we fled, right, after the Assyrian invasion, right? The northern tribes went to South Africa. After 70 AD, with the Roman invasion, Judah, Israel, Benjamin, and Levi went to West Africa. And this is why the nations took us as slaves, because Israel has historically been slaves, and wherever Israel is a slave, that nation becomes great. Israel makes those nations great. Okay, so the European powers want us to be their slaves, and you see why Islam tries to keep us as slaves as well. And so you see in Libya today, right, they're taking more Israelites as slaves. So we're entering that time where the dragon is pursuing Israel with earnest. Okay, and so there's going to be a call to a time of fasting soon, but I'll let you know for those who want to participate. Peace and blessings, Israel. Your captivity is ending.